Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? What's up, everybody? I'm Phil.
And I'm Cameron.
Two Navy vets, just here to talk politics.
We're here with some differing views, but we're here to have a civil and a healthy discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Pocket Politics. Welcome back, everybody, to Pocket Politics. Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, not the most exciting news week. It was kind of dull, but there was still some hitters in there. What do you think?
There's always news to be had, but for this week, we actually did have one of our listeners reach out to us, say that he wanted to hear our takes on something, and we thought we'd certainly oblige that.
Some fan feedback. So what did they say? They said they want to hear our premature take on the 2024 presidential race.
Absolutely. Wants to hear kind of our thoughts on what 2024 looks like from a presidential standpoint. I mean, obviously we could spend weeks talking about 2024 with other races, but specifically the White House.
Absolutely.
What our thoughts are.
My initial thought is it's way too early to even be thinking about this. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of directions we can go in this.
There's a ton.
So
I mean, it's actually pretty interesting when you stop and think about it. So I think the most natural one for everyone to throw out when they say 2024 is Biden versus Trump. And while that is certainly a possibility, I think there are many scenarios that could have neither one of them on the ticket.
I agree. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, if Republicans win the House and the Senate this November, and then they draw up articles of impeachment, yet they own. I mean, it's a stretch, but I mean, it could be like we could see going into 2024 elections is Biden not even being it sounds absurd, but it could happen.
Well, I mean, besides impeachment and all that kind of stuff, I mean, Biden's numbers, his approval numbers aren't the greatest, although, as I'm sure
back
you're
to the mid-40s. Back to the mid-40s.
I knew you were going to say rising, but still maybe not as high as he would want him to be. But the other thing is, I mean, he is an older gentleman. I mean, he could come out and health reasons could come up. Not that I'm wishing bad health on him, but I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen.
Okay, at this stage, right? Biden, I think, is at 44 or 45% approval,
somewhere in the mid 40s.
But at this stage, keep in mind, at this stage in his presidency, the last president that was competitive with that was who? Do you know?
In the 40s?
No, that was high at this stage.
That was higher than
45 than 45%.
Let me think. Let's go back.
Think second term George W. Bush post 9/11.
Okay. Well, second term would have kicked off.
Sorry, first term, right? Was it first term?
So first term for him would have been post 9/11. So you're saying post 9/11 George W. Bush had higher.
Yep, post 9/11, and that was the only time they've been any higher. So
just out of curiosity, what were those like up in the 50s or 60s?
Yeah, it was low 50s.
Okay.
So
I mean
In all respect, I mean, you say his are still low, but guess what? They're higher than
many of his competitors.
They're higher than Trump's were at this stage. They're higher than Obama was both terms during this stage.
So there's definitely hope there, I guess, is what you're saying. I mean, he's not as far down in the toilet as maybe others are suggesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But still, I think there's maybe not a very real, but there is a possibility that Biden doesn't run in 2024. And I think that opens up all kinds of different avenues that are certainly fun to talk about, right? For guys like you and I think they're fun to talk about. And then the Trump piece, too. I mean, whether he runs, doesn't run, there's a whole thing we can get to on that. But
yeah, did you know that he actually could run for president from a prison cell?
That's wild.
There was like some legal scholar that like did the research and tried to figure it out, and it turns out he could potentially run for president in jail, which is absurd. And again, right, like, who knows? We'll talk later in the show about his willingness to end up there, seemingly. But if let's say Trump doesn't run, who is the next most popular Republican candidate in your mind?
So I think if you ask a lot of Republicans right now who is on the top of the ticket in 2024, if it's not Trump, I think most are going to tell you Ron DeSantis. And I think DeSantis is kind of being groomed as the next Trump, if you will. I mean, when he's out there, whether it's stumping or just in his general, giving an interview or whatever, he comes off as kind of, I don't know, almost Trump light. He drums down on social issues. I mean, he's in the news all the time talking about a social issue. But he knows how to work the political angle a little bit more than Trump. He can be PC when he needs to be, and I think DeSantis is smart enough to know that. So I think Ron DeSantis stands a real shot at being the guy if Trump is not the guy.
Do you think head-to-head DeSantis beats Cruz?
So like in a primary?
Yep.
Like interesting question.
Say we flash forward to Iowa.
Yeah.
Or New Hampshire, one of the early,
Sure.
Primaries. Does he beat Ted Cruz?
I think so.
Okay.
I do. I think so. But I think Cruz would give him a run. Now, this is assuming Trump's name is not on there, right? I mean, we're just assuming it's DeSantis versus a few other ones, none of them named Trump.
I mean, DeSantis could beat Trump in a primary too. I mean, we can't rule that out. I mean,
potentially. Well, let me ask you that, right? And I don't mean to just throw something on your lap, but let's say it was Trump and DeSantis in a primary. Do you think Ron DeSantis would stand a shot at knocking him off?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Is because one, I think you're 100% right about him being a little bit more. He's a little bit more controlled than Trump is. I think maybe if we rewound, you said politically correct,
politically savvy, or I think I said can be politically correct when he needs to be.
I don't think he's ever really politically correct, but
maybe political savvy is a better.
So
politically
I just think
savvy
he's
is a better word.
Smarter, right? And so he'd be more willing to not like Trump is like notorious for saying things that gets him into trouble. And I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to do that.
To be fair, DeSantis is also a lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he knows and understands, I think, obviously how the law works, and so where he can push an envelope or push the envelope where he can't. I think so. Yeah, but I think you would agree with me though that DeSantis would bring you a lot of the same policies Trump would. He'll champion a lot of the same causes Trump will champion.
Oh, I think he's definitely Trump, but more dangerous for the country, honestly.
So I think Ron DeSantis, going back to your question, though, I think he's got to be at the top of the list for, Republicans not named Trump.
I agree with you, and I think that's we can even say that more so because he's been making trips around the country.
He has
in the past, couple of months. He started to get out there.
I think he's gone around maybe to some fairs in some states, possibly.
He went out to Arizona, and then he's also, he's been going around, so that's largely something you see prior to somebody's presidential run.
He also gets a lot of airtime. Fox News, some of these, some other networks give him a lot of airtime. He's always doing interviews and such, so he's getting the press right now. But there are some other names as well. I think Glenn Youngkin's name has to be mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up last week, right? And I think it's a possibility. It seems like he's still a little early in his political, large political career, right? I mean, he's not even, a year into his first term as governor?
Yeah, a little over, right around a year or so.
Yeah, so I think it could be a little bit premature to consider him that serious. Does he beat DeSantis, or does he have the name recognition? I mean, he's not traveling around the country. He's not doing all these other things. So he's kind of he ran that campaign that tried to stay as far away from Trump as possible. And ever since then, he's been largely quiet. I mean, there's not been a lot of Youngkin news lately.
So I was going to say that he did, when he was running, he did try and stay away, like you said, from Trump, or at least when it brought up on the campaign trail, he would just sort of skirt the issue or dodge the issue, if you will.
But then what has he done? I mean, since he's been governor?
I mean, I haven't really followed Virginia politics all that close to see what he's been doing.
Yeah, but you don't have to. If somebody does something that's like that has some sort of notoriety to it, you hear about it in the news, right?
Well,
like we hear about what DeSantis does. I don't follow Florida politics at all, but we're always hearing about DeSantis.
We are, because he's in the news, right?
Yep. And we hear about other governors quite a bit too, right? Like Abbott we hear about a lot. We also hear about Whitmer from Michigan quite a bit, right? So there are states that we don't really follow that still make a lot of news.
The only thing I was going to say about Youngkin, though, I have heard a little bit, stuff on his education. I mean, that was a big thing that he was doing down there in Virginia to get himself elected, right? Wasn't he the guy that was championing for people like, hey, let's take control of your child's education? I think that's kind of been his big thing, right? Was education what helped to get him elected. So I guess he's made some news there, because I hear his name every so often, but I think he's one of those guys that may be lurking in the shadow. I could see Glenn Youngkin throwing his name out there, and maybe when he does that, not necessarily thinking he's really going to win in 2024, but his name is there, he gets a little bit of traction for possibly a future run. So I think his name comes up.
Yeah, I just think, like, we go back to this, and we've talked about this multiple times before, is that when you are one of these serious candidates and you put on a big run and then you lose, you kind of fall into obscurity, right? And this happens sometimes. Sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot. I mean, we talked about
Marco Rubio.
We talked about Rubio. We talked about Bobby Jindal, right?
There's a name I never hear.
Yeah,
anymore.
He fell off the face of the planet after potentially being like the new and upcoming Republican guy. So there's all kinds of different people that even look at a guy like Ryan, not Tim, but Paul.
Yep.
Right. I mean, he kind of just disappeared off the scene. I mean, he had that turmoil at the end of his career and just kind of fell off. So it happens.
So you're saying that Youngkin may be risking some things if he throws his name out there?
I think if he throws his name out there in 2024, he could risk being driven into political obscurity.
Interesting. Okay. Just for some reason, I have this thought in my mind that he's lurking in the shadows possibly. But another name sticking with the Republicans is Nikki Haley. Do you think she's a contender at all?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, I feel like we throw out these names.
She does have name recognition.
She does, not always necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, but she does have name recognition. I think she's tried to keep her image fairly clean over the last few years.
Let me ask you this. Do you think we're going to get a female Republican before we get a female Democrat?
I'm trying to think of any female Republicans. Right now, the only one that I'm even registered... Well, the only two...
Nikki Haley, I mean...
Nikki Haley and then Noam out of South Dakota. They are the two that would come to mind.
Yeah, Liz Cheney.
True.
Technically a Republican.
No.
I mean, not even technically, actually a Republican.
Yeah, no, she is. That's it. Well, there's that. I'm going to talk about Cheney a little bit here. I was just going to say with Nikki Haley, I mean, I think there's a possibility.
And also Noam, when you bring up Noam, I mean, she's getting beat up by Fox News hosts. That can't be looking good for her. I mean, she literally got torn apart by Steve Doocy, right, on Fox News. I mean, is it Steve? I think it's Steve.
I think, yeah. I mean, okay. Let's go back to Nikki Haley.
Did you see that clip though, Cam?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. So she basically was on Fox News talking about stuff, and Steve Doocy's just shredding her with no actual effort.
Was this recently?
Yeah, it was last week.
Okay. I'll just go back to Haley in a second. It's interesting.
Just to be clear though, I don't watch Fox News. I just see people on Instagram making fun of it. So just so that's out there for all our listeners.
So going back to Haley though, I mean, I think her name is there. I think she has certainly expressed interest in the past. I think she's I think she's one of those wild cards. You could see her. I think some of this depends on if these people see a lane there. I mean, let's say Trump doesn't run, and for some reason Ron DeSantis falls off the face of the earth and is no longer running, and then maybe Nikki Haley sees like, hey, here's my opportunity. Or what about somebody like Nikki Haley, possibly a running mate for a Ron DeSantis? I could see something like that.
Yeah. Now let's I could see that. I could see her as a running mate more so than an actual presidential nomination. Now, with that being said, does DeSantis still have the sway if he gets beat in the governor race?
Yeah, good question.
And now I think that's a stretch because I don't think he's going to lose. But anything could happen.
No,
and,
anything
and
could
we're
happen,
seeing
yeah.
the political environment now that we have never seen. At least I have not seen in my lifetime.
I think if Ron DeSantis gets beat, I think then he's all in 2024. I mean, I think he turns around like, all right, fine, destiny is what it is, and I'm heading off for the races for the presidential election and doesn't look back. He's got a real following. Boy, that is interesting though. If he does suffer, what if he got blown out? Now, again, I don't see Charlie Crist blowing him out.
Yeah, but if he gets a referendum in a state that's largely designed to keep him elected, right? I mean, look, they've recently gerrymandered. They've changed all the districts in Republicans' favor in Florida. I mean, if he gets beat in a state that is effectively set up for his reelection,
I don't think Charlie Crist beats him though.
I think it's a stretch. I think there's a possibility, but.
I mean, there's you said.
But either way, more importantly,
but you think his name gets damaged if he gets defeated?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, okay. Absolutely.
And then does that open a lane for a Haley, possibly, or someone like her?
Possibly, but I still think she's too far down the totem pole.
What about Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz, I think, is up there. I think honestly, we're most likely to see some combination of Cruz, DeSantis, Cheney in 2024 on the Republican side. I know you mentioned Hawley. I don't think Hawley's in it yet. I think Hawley is probably still, still like getting over the embarrassment of the Benny Hill videos of him running through the Capitol. I mean,
I think Josh Hawley.
The guy's a clown.
I think he's an up and coming guy though, as far as his name is, and I think he runs one of these years, but he's young. I mean, I don't have his age in front of me, but I don't think Josh Hawley's over 40 years old. I don't think. I could be wrong. But I'll go back to Ted Cruz. I think he's still got the name recognition. I think he's still, playing to the cards, if you will, to run. I mean, you say combination now. When you say combination, you mean like DeSantis, Cruz, Cheney in a primary, or do you mean like a DeSantis, Cruz on the same ticket?
I mean, not on the same ticket. I don't think DeSantis or Cruz has an ego that will allow them to be a vice presidential candidate. I mean, and the other thing too is I think Cruz is probably one of the most likely candidates because we've seen Ted Cruz will go in whatever direction it appears the voters want. I mean, he's notorious for flipping and saying one thing one week and then saying another thing another week and just like kowtowing to TV cameras and stuff like that. So Ted Cruz, I think, is probably a pretty likely candidate to be in there.
You think he can get traction nationwide, though?
He has before.
True. Well, let me ask you this. You think he can win a primary and be put on the national ticket?
The first part, winning primaries, he has won primaries before.
He has won some, true.
Yeah.
Now I will say he's been defeated in several, but he also ran into the brick wall that was Donald Trump when he was running those primaries. And
Cruz's pronouns are kiss my ass,
Look, let's go back. Though, I guess if you do go back to the 2016 race, early on, right, as Donald Trump is still kind of gaining traction and pushing forward, right? Ted Cruz had a lot of momentum around him early on in that race. And I will say this, you talked about Rubio earlier. You and I both kind of talked about Rubio earlier after that presidential run, getting, the wind knocked out of him and never really coming back. I mean, Ted Cruz got knocked out of it, but he never really went away. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, but again, this is because of Ted Cruz's ability to change his beliefs and his political stance depending on whatever he thinks at the time is going to keep his popularity up. I mean,
I see him throwing his name out there, but I think a guy like DeSantis could knock him down. I think maybe... I don't know. Ted Cruz is one of those guys that I think he runs well in certain states. Texas, for example, right? He does well in Texas. Texas, very red state. Although he did almost get beat, in 2020, wasn't it, for the Senate? O'Rourke almost beat him.
Yeah.
That was 20. I was going to say 2018, but no, that was 2020. It was pretty close. So, he comes out there. I think he does well, though. I mean, overall, in a place like Texas, I don't see him doing well on a national stage. That's just me. I think other candidates go above him. I think Ted Cruz is, he can be very polarizing, right? I mean, I know you'd agree with me on that.
Yeah,
right?
well, and keep in mind, this is the thing I always think about when I think of Ted Cruz is people that I know who voted for Trump in the primaries because they didn't like Ted Cruz. And so that's like, if that's your, and these are very, very moderate registered Republicans in Texas, right? And they vote for him in a primary to avoid getting Ted Cruz, right? Which that should be a statement.
I don't think that speaks well for Ted Cruz going forward.
No, I don't.
On a national scale.
So I do think if he went head to head with DeSantis would beat him.
You said
at least right now.
You said something about Josh Hawley earlier. I mean, I think his name floats around. I could see him dropping his name in and pulling it back out. I think he's thinking long term. Again,
so he's 42.
Okay, he is a little older than I thought then.
But I think we're more likely to see a guy like Hawley on the vice presidential ticket.
Interesting. So do you think a guy like, say, a DeSantis, you think Hawley would be his running mate, potentially?
I mean, I think Hawley would kiss his ass to no end, but...
But you think Hawley would step into that role of a vice president, more so than, say, a Ted Cruz?
Yeah, because he's younger, and he's kind of got this, like...
He's trying to get some traction.
Yeah, he's trying to get that traction. I think he's an up-and-comer. Now, again... there are some others. I mean, but if we look at who do we think for the Democrats?
Well, there was one more name, though, I wanted to mention with the Republicans real quick, Phil.
Okay.
Well, actually, two more. I think Greg Abbott's name potentially surfaces there. Potentially. He's got all kinds of name recognition down there in Texas. And I know he's one of those guys. People either seem to love him or hate him. But I could see Governor Abbott getting traction in a primary. I really could, especially if Trump doesn't run. And I actually think Greg Abbott could give Ron DeSantis a run for his money. Now, does he beat DeSantis on a national scale overall? I'm not necessarily saying that, but I think Abbott would generate some traction. Do you think Greg Abbott would potentially throw his name in there?
No.
Okay, you don't think so at all.
I don't.
You think he's content being governor in Texas?
Yeah, and again, this is a guy. While it be a long shot, he could lose. I mean, he could again get beat. I think that's a long shot, but
let me throw my other name out there quick. Then Larry Hogan. He has been flirting with this idea. He's been going around the country stumping at some fairs. So all these other names I mentioned on here, well, I should say several of the names are kind of in that Trump camp. Larry Hogan is absolutely not. He is a moderate Republican, if you will, if there ever was one. Does Larry Hogan have an avenue in 2024, Phil?
Possibly. But
okay.
I think a lot of that depends. Again, I think this one is too early to tell. I mean, yes, I agree. We've talked about him recently on the show. I agree that he has been getting his name out there. But he's still not a guy that I hear about a lot, right? Like, I really only hear about Larry Hogan from you. And so I think there is a possibility, but I think as far as him, it's too early to call.
Just not enough. You're saying not enough name brand recognition nationwide. The other thing...
and we also don't know if the Republicans are going to accept a moderate.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is there even an avenue for a guy like Larry Hogan? I mean, is there an avenue for that? I don't know that there is.
We have no idea. We got to wait until November to even get a hint.
Yeah, and right now, before we go to the Democrats, Liz Cheney, how does she factor into this?
Well, she's a complete and utter wild card. I mean, does she run? I think yes. Does she run as a Republican? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Does she run as if she's not going to run as a Republican, does she run as an independent, or does she completely switch parties and run as a Democrat?
I don't think Liz Cheney could bring herself to run as a Democrat.
I don't think she could either. But do we have any sort of clue? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen somebody that's big in the political world switch parties.
Yeah, so she has name recognition and money. I will give her those two big things.
Yes, yeah.
I think more money than people realize, because I think a lot of people on the national stage looked at her and like, oh, whatever Liz Cheney's done, blah, blah, blah. But Liz Cheney has money behind her. She's got the backers. She has got name brand recognition. She's got a lot of friends in politics. The question becomes with Liz Cheney, if she were to run as an independent, who does she take votes from? And I saw a thing the other day that suggested if Liz Cheney were to throw her name out there as an independent, she would help Donald Trump. Because now suddenly moderate Republicans who maybe were just never Trumpers or whatever would suddenly say, oh, hey, I have a candidate to vote for. I don't have to vote for Joe Biden anymore. I can throw my vote to Liz Cheney, and that helps Trump's. And I think Liz Cheney would think long and hard about that, because she has said she's out there trying to, keep Donald Trump and his ways out of the White House.
Yeah, isn't it weird that the context in which we talk about Liz Cheney is like, it's a world in which we discuss her running not even to become president, but running
to keep someone out.
I mean, yeah. It's just
it is
like the world we live in right now.
It
right?
is.
Okay.
But I'll. So we've talked about the Republicans now. Phill, we'll jump over to the Democrats and start with that one. I was going to start with the obvious one, if you don't mind, which is Joe Biden running. I think all indications are. Well, I shouldn't say all indications. I think there's a good possibility he runs for another term and is on the top of the ticket. What do you think?
I don't think he does.
Okay.
And I think that I don't know, people may disagree with me. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do. But don't you think he's like, okay, we went in 4 years, we got the job done. I finally did what I had been trying to do my entire political career, and now I'm good. I'm gonna go relax. I
think there's a chance he doesn't run. Sure,
he's old as shit.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, his age alone. I am sure for a person of his age, what he does every day, whether you like him or not, right? What he goes through every day, what any president goes through every day, has got to be very taxing. Mm-hmm. And maybe that guy wakes up and says, "Hey, you know, kind of like what you mentioned a minute ago. Mission accomplished. Got in there, kept Trump out."
But regardless of that, he's done a bunch of massive things, right? He's signed like 9 major pieces of legislation. I mean, he's done a lot. So I think part of his legacy might be turning it over to somebody else, Well,
then who does he turn it over to?
I mean,
okay, let me throw a name out.
It's up for debate, but I think the most likely person for him to turn it over to would be Kamala Harris.
Yeah, that was probably the name I have right underneath him.
And
would be
solely
Harris.
Because she's the vice president.
I don't think. Now, I will say this: I think Harris struggles nationally. I think she would have a hard time with.
Yeah, but there was already that poll a couple of weeks ago that Harris would beat DeSantis.
That's also very early. Now, I know that's maybe all we have to work on right now.
That was very early, but keep in mind that's when Biden's approval rating was in the 30s.
Yeah, and I think wasn't that the same poll that showed Biden still beating Trump?
Yeah,
I think right.
Yeah.
Harris struggled in 2020 when she was trying to run. Remember, she garnered very little traction and had to get out early.
But just about everybody did except for Biden and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, and Buttigieg had some traction there for a bit. He was doing okay.
He's one we got to talk about. Because
he's on my list.
Because he's doing a really good job talking about the things that people care about, right? He's out there going around the country.
Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah, passing out checks from the deal that's been done, the infrastructure deal. I mean, he's been doing a really good job at going out there and saying, look at this project we're building in your state for infrastructure and roads and all these things as the transportation secretary.
I'll push back a little bit, because when people are talking about like crumbling, well, maybe not the crumbling roads because they do have the infrastructure thing passed, but like the airline thing, I mean, that guy was nowhere to be found when everybody's like, hey, transportation secretary, what's going on with the airlines? And Buttigieg is nowhere to be found.
That's not true, though. That may have been an article headline you read or something, but no, he was on the Sunday morning shows during that whole thing.
Yeah, not saying much. He was skirting the issues. Here's my thing with Buttigieg. I think. So mentioned a little bit.
When did he skirt the issue?
What did he say? I didn't see him saying anything.
But you're the one saying that.
Yeah, so I didn't see him saying anything.
I'm just saying, he was on one of the Sunday morning shows during that airline catastrophe. Well, it wasn't even a catastrophe. Some flights were getting canceled.
A lot of flights.
Yeah, but he was on. Okay, and guess what? To be honest with you, transportation secretary doesn't own the airlines. The airlines are private companies.
Yeah.
Now, he does own the interstates and, some percentage of Amtrak, because Amtrak is still, partially public and partially private.
Here's what I'll say.
But he doesn't own Delta.
Okay. Again, though, it seems like when people are asking, like, hey, where is this guy? He's not around.
No, he's literally this week he's been going around the country
lately
handing out checks to local and state governments.
I will give you that, right? There's a chance for him to do the easy win, like, hey, here you go, local
It's not
government.
an easy win. His administration did that.
So
how is that an easy win?
Yeah, because it's already been done for him, so he just goes and hands a check out.
But that's his job.
But
right, isn't it easier to blame him for something that a private company is doing? Like saying, "Oh, Pete Buttigieg, where were you at when the airlines were screwing up?" Why is that even a thing? He doesn't own the airlines.
Again, I don't know what the guy's done, and I don't think he's got the resume to run for president. He's tried it, but what has he really done? Okay, he was a mayor of a medium-sized city in Indiana. I don't even think South Bend is medium-sized.
What had Trump done?
Okay, now that is a fair thing.
Okay,
to say. But
now does a mayor do more? Has a mayor done more than a single-term senator?
So here's what I will say about that. I think a mayor. No, I don't think so. I think a senator is in Washington, D.C., looking at the issues as a whole in the Beltway, whereas I think a mayor is got one little piece of the puzzle. Now, a governor, yes, because a governor's running a whole state. A mayor, and by the way, South Bend, Indiana is not big at all. I've been through South Bend.
I agree with you. Big. I agree with you. But what I'm saying is the mayor runs an organization. Senators don't run organizations.
Well, okay, I'll give you that, but I'm not going to give Buttigieg credit for running a huge organization because South Bend is not that big of a city. And I think and to go back, Trump ran huge organizations into the ground. Okay, but
so
Trump is a wild card, right? He comes out with no political experience traditionally, and I think you would agree with me on that. Those we see going forward with presidents are senators, governors, etc. I think Buttigieg he's still got to grow a little bit before he comes out there. Now, does he try it if Biden doesn't run? I'll give you that. I think he tries it, but I don't think he gets the traction. I think there are some other names that I think stand a better shot than Pete Buttigieg. Bernie Sanders. Does he come back around at, what is he now, 81, I think?
Yeah, he's getting up there.
I don't think Bernie has it in him to go again, but do you think Bernie Sanders possibly tries another run?
No.
Okay.
Easy answer. No, I don't think he tries. I could be wrong. Again, this is based on nothing.
No, I know. But it's fun to talk about. But you, at this point in time, you think Bernie Sanders has had enough?
I don't think he's had enough. I just don't think he's going to try and run again.
Well, when I say had enough of trying to run for president, thinking he can maybe push his agenda better from the sidelines than trying to run for president.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think he can push his agenda better, and it's not the sidelines; it's the Senate.
Okay, what I meant by that though was that not necessarily.
I mean, you just told
House.
Me you thought
Agreed. But what I'm saying is pushing his agenda, I guess, directly from the White House, being the man on the center stage, whereas more on the side a little bit.
Yeah, I think yes. Yeah, I do.
Okay. I don't think Again, I think Sanders does well in certain states. I think he's like a Ted Cruz. I just think he doesn't. I don't think he can win nationally. But does he
He is nothing like Ted Cruz.
And
only in the fact that he's not going to win nationally and do good in a couple of states. That's the only way he is anywhere near Ted Cruz.
Okay. Yeah, he's not like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a Republican. Bernie Sanders is a self-labeled socialist. So there's that. Last time I checked, Ted Cruz didn't believe in communism. So there is that. So.
Well, what do you mean?
Bernie Sanders.
Socialism is different than communism.
Many Americans would consider it one and the same.
I don't care what many Americans think, right? You just said it, but you are wrong, right? The definition of socialism is vastly different than the definition of communism.
You think so? Because again, this is what's hurt Sanders all these years.
I know what's hurt him.
It has.
Talking about whether he's going to run or not.
I know, but I'm just saying that. I'm saying this with him. I think. Call him a socialist, whatever. You know as well as I do that Bernie Sanders tries to get himself out there on the national stage. The Republicans will have that hammer and sickle, old Soviet Union flag draped behind him, and he's an easy defeat. But let me ask you this. does he hand the reins over to AOC? I looked it up. She's 30. So at the time of the election, in 2024, if I got my math right, she will have just turned 35 years old and technically old enough to run. Now,
she's not running for president.
Yeah, is she the long term? Well, okay, so you just want to defer that, say no way in 2020. I don't think so
she's
either.
She's not running in 2024.
I don't think so either.
We're talking about 2024, so
True.
She's not
All right,
running.
Fair enough. Here's the guy that I think is ready to take the reins from Biden if he doesn't run, and that's Gavin Newsom.
I agree, and we've talked about it before. I think Newsom is going to run. I think he's a lock for the ticket. I think he's almost a lock for the candidacy. I mean,
over these other names we've been talking about,
the only potential is Kamala Harris. I mean, VP Harris is like the only one who will get the convention's approval to go. Because keep in mind, right, that yes, the primaries count for something, but it's really up to the convention, right? So whoever they say is going to be their ticket candidate is going to be, and I don't think he beats her, but
oh, you don't. So in a primary, you think Kamala Harris knocks him
not
off?
In a primary. I didn't say a primary. I said with the convention. When the convention is held and all the Democrats get together and say, "What are we putting on the ticket?" He's not going to beat Harris just because she's the VP.
I think Newsom. Personally, I think Newsom would be the guy in 2024 if it's not Biden. That's my 2 cents. There are some other names, Elizabeth Warren, but I don't.
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope.
What do you think of Tim Kaine?
Nope.
Okay. Just
nope.
Not even. Maybe a VP guy.
He already tried once, right?
He did, but I mean,
yeah, no.
Doesn't mean you don't grab him again.
Is that so? You got more of the history than I have. Who else has run on multiple separate tickets for VP? Is that ever happened before?
So I can't think of it ever happening, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I don't think Tim Kaine. I just kind of threw a name out there. What about one more name that
keep in mind too? Like when we talk about vice presidents, there's like 7 presidents or something who didn't even have a vice president, so it's kind of a weird,
Let me ask you this. Well, here's one more name that I think could generate some traction. I don't think he'd win, but Beto O'Rourke, does he throw his name back out there, Phil? I mean, he keeps running for everything.
Come on, if he loses the gubernatorial in Texas, he is not running for president.
He runs for everything, it seems like. So,
well, you say that, but he's basically ran for.
So he was a representative from Texas.
He was a representative, so that's one.
Which he did. Which he had some success there. I think he was a 3-term representative. I think 2 or 3.
So he's ran for representative in Texas, state representative.
Then he was a senator, or ran for. I'm sorry.
Then he ran for senator.
Yeah, sorry.
And now ran for that. So he hasn't really run for everything. He's ran three
and he's
campaigns.
Run for president. He did. He ran for president in 2020. So does he try it again?
No.
Oh, wow.
If he loses, well, okay, he does potentially, but not right now because I don't think he's going to if he wins Texas, he's not going to let go that early and run in 2024. If he loses the gubernatorial in Texas, it's over. He's not doing it again. He may run for something in Texas, but he's certainly not running for president.
VP candidate, maybe?
Very, very late. I would say we're more likely to see him as a VP candidate than anything else.
So possibly like a Harris O'Rourke ticket or a Newsom O'Rourke ticket, possibly.
Wow, that would be that would be good. I like that. Newsom O'Rourke.
I mean, I don't like it, but as far as the possibilities, I could see that ticket.
Why don't you like it? I mean, Newsom is running the 5th largest economy in the entire world.
Because I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom. I'm not a fan of Beto O'Rourke.
Okay, look, I'm not a huge Newsom fan, but I think that would be an interesting ticket, and the guy can get shit done, and he can run shit.
Well, so you talk to people from California.
You talk to people from California. Where in California are you talking to them? Because California is a very divided state.
I know. I mean, once you get off the coast, it's like you're on another planet.
Orange County's on the coast. Orange County is a Republican stronghold.
Okay. True, but in and around the cities of San Diego, many parts of Los Angeles, San Francisco.
What is more in and around the San Diego and what is more in and around San Diego and Los Angeles than Orange County?
So Orange County up around LA, but San Diego County is very blue.
True, but the next door to San Diego County is Orange County.
Okay, I got it, but there are certainly parts of Los Angeles that are very blue too. What I was saying though is if you get inland, like you get out around the Sierra Nevadas and up in places like that, I mean
Bakersfield, you know.
Bakersfield's very red, yeah.
Yep.
Isn't that? I think Bakersfield. That's where Kevin McCarthy's district is.
I believe so. Yeah. But there's even places like on the coast in between San Francisco and LA that are very conservative as well. Right?
No, there are.
So
but
outside of the major cities in California, it is very red, and Gavin Newsom successfully runs that and then successfully wins. Right?
Well, okay. All right. I'm not a fan. I personally think that California's gone in the wrong direction with their politics. But again, you may feel differently. I think you would know right out the gate I'm probably not going to be a Gavin Newsom fan. But I will say this. I do think he stands a real shot at being on the top of the ticket for the Democrats in 2024 if Joe Biden doesn't run.
I agree. I think when we consider Harris, the fact that Biden may still be in there, Gavin Newsom, it's hard to really talk about anybody else.
Yeah. Well, and these are, again, this is kind of just a fun discussion to have. I mean, these are all possibilities. You heard us throw a lot of names around. And you know what? Those names could all be erased if it is Biden and Trump running.
All these names could be erased if certain Secretary of State battles are lost around the country and the will of the people is just taken away, right? I mean, we got to realize that that's a huge possibility, right? We'll talk about it in a minute, but, that's a lot of what Biden's speech this week was about. And then the other part of that is that saving democracy is now polling as the highest priority for voters going into November.
I did see that.
So that is a huge, right, across the whole country, that is the number one priority for voters.
So
if that is taken away, the whole 40 minutes we've done so far is null and void.
So I did see that, but let's talk about Biden's speech here from the other night. Phill, what'd you think of it?
I thought it was excellent. So I thought everything about it was good. I thought the way he handled the heckler was good. I thought the way he just laid out the fact that, look, the biggest threat to our country right now is people in our country was amazing. He ran on largely a unity building idea, right? That was most of his campaign, was bringing America back together. And basically what he said is, this speech is my reaching out to independents and moderate Republicans who are not on board with defunding the FBI and going into FBI Cincinnati with a nail gun and an AR-15, and they're not against stealing classified documents, or not for stealing classified documents. And he's using his speech to reach out to these voters, and he did that for the first half, and then he said, and by the way, look at all the things we've gotten done with this administration. And so I think he did an excellent job.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, so there were some things I'll give him. When his pushback on, when he said MAGA Republicans, he did make the comment of that isn't
most Republicans.
He did. He said that, and I'll give him some credit there. He said I think first he said that's not all Republicans, and then I think he turned around and said that isn't even most Republicans. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I don't remember exactly, but I think during his speech he said, I know because I've worked with many of them, and I think he may have even said I'm friends with some of them, right?
Yeah, and he's genuine about that. I mean,
no, he is. I mean, we know he's been was a longtime friend with John McCain, but we know he's got friendships with other senators in there. I mean, he's called Lindsey Graham a friend. Mm-hmm. Very recently, he's called Lindsey Graham a friend. So, I'll give him that, and I think that is his plug to someone like a Lisa Murkowski or a Susan Collins or whatever.
Yeah, but he's not making these speeches for Congress members.
No, but I'm saying people that maybe think along lines of someone like a Murkowski or whatever.
But hold on. So to be real, right? You're a Republican that doesn't agree with the MAGA side, right?
I mean, the extremists I'm not a fan of, no.
Okay.
But But was I a fan of this? No, you said it a minute ago. He ran on being a unifier, and what was unifying in this speech?
A lot of things.
A lot of people in this country are disagreeing with that.
Who?
He's getting all kinds of pushback from independents. He's getting. I will tell you, even some of these moderate forums that I'm on Facebook have said, hey, not really a fan of that speech. There's a lot of Republicans out there, even moderate Republicans, that are saying, hey, the president just basically said I'm a semi-fascist.
Yeah, I think if you listen to that whole speech beginning to end, and you said the president just called me a semi-fascist, you probably need to do some introspective.
I don't
probably need to take a look at your feelings.
I don't think he unified with that speech at all. I mean, there is a lot of GOP pushback. Ron DeSantis said it was disgusting.
Yeah, but Ron DeSantis is MAGA #1.
Yeah, well, again, no. DeSantis says, or I think he said disgusting. One of the worst speeches I've ever heard. Rick Scott called him out.
Rick Scott is MAGA #2.
Oh, I would call Rick Scott MAGA.
Rick Scott is platforming on getting rid of Social Security.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him MAGA #2 though. I mean, he hasn't really been out there.
He's pretty MAGA. Come on.
So, okay. Besides that, though, there's a lot of Republicans calling him out. I'll always give a guy credit where I think credit is due. I think he tried to reach the middle voters. I think he tried to reach moderate Republicans. I just don't think he did it with this. I think he's struggling trying to reach the middle right now. And he can stump on what he's done, but I think he's, a lot of what he's done hasn't really been unifying. I mean, yeah, there's been chips that we've said all these bipartisan bills, but there's been some that he's gone on solo. I mean, yeah, we could go on and on here about what he's and debate what he's done, hasn't done. I wasn't as big a fan as you were, I know a lot of Democrats champion the speech. Remains to be seen. We'll see how the midterms go. I think is really where we're going to see how some of this plays out. Yeah, and you know what, Phil? I want to say this though. To be fair, in 2022, it doesn't matter who you are that's president. As polarized as this country is, I mean, Republican or Democrat, you get up and give a speech, you're going to have 30-40% of the country that hates you, regardless of the party you are. So I will say that, right? We are in a very polarizing time.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that it's a little bit exaggerated. If you listen to the actual words that he said, right? This speech, he didn't. I don't recall this speech him saying semi-fascist. That was a different speech a week prior. But
it's come out of his mouth recently.
Yeah, but it's kind of true, right? I mean, think about it. Like, what's not fascist about trying to not have the will of the people in the general election overturned?
I mean, if you're talking
is that fascist?
If you're talking about controlling governments, that's
fascist.
Fascist.
So you would agree that
that
people wearing a MAGA hat who think that regardless of Trump winning or losing, he should still be the president.
That you're talking about a very extreme wing of the party.
Keep in mind the polling shows that losing democracy is the number one priority for voters.
I got it. Not by much, but
and he's out there talking about it.
I got it. Again, you know what? I was going to say this. Going back to the whole Republicans are fascists, I really don't think Rob Portman is a fascist.
He's not saying Republicans are fascists.
Yeah, he said he basically did.
No, he said that the MAGA wing is semi-fascist. The MAGA wing, not all Republicans. He's saying in the speech, he's like, this isn't all Republicans. This isn't even most Republicans.
Well, again,
right? Did he not say that in the speech?
No, I said that, but
I know. So then, how are you saying that you turn that 5 minutes later? You say he said that Republicans are semi-fascist.
Well,
he didn't say that.
Okay, but this is again. If you go back to how it's being perceived by a lot of people, there are a number of Republicans that are waking up saying, "All right, well, basically, the president's just calling me out." So. If
you think the president is calling you out, you need to look at your position in life.
Well, we'll see.
Because people that he's calling out are he specifically said in the speech.
We'll see.
The people that are trying to have violence against our country. Are you trying to have violence against your country?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
Then why do you feel like you're being called out?
I think all Republicans feel like that right now. Look,
but if you just listen to the words of the speech, you can't feel that way.
I've listened to enough of Joe Biden over the last 2 years to know how he feels, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I was looking for the unifier, and he just doesn't seem to care. I mean, when I think he's going to be the unifier or try to do it with like the bipartisan infrastructure bill, right? The minute you think that maybe this guy is trying to be a middle-of-the-road president, he comes out with, then he's got AOC and Bernie Sanders pulling him a whole nother direction. He's giving handouts to college students and all kinds of things. So,
you know that that almost all of that $10,000 of individual relief is going to go to paying off interest, not even paying off the college tuition itself. I mean, we can get on this. We're not going to get back into this.
We've already been on that.
But I'm just saying, I think if you actually listen to the words of the speech and stop listening to what a pundit is telling you, that you will feel very differently about it.
I think we will see how this plays out here in the fall midterms, and I think this is
it's playing out pretty good now. Like I said, he's got the highest approval rating at this point in the country since George W. Bush post 9/11. He's gotten tons of legislation signed.
This is a gamble.
Right?
It's a gamble.
Republicans are getting unseated in races around the country.
It's a gamble though, because he's still got the economy to worry about, and this is a gamble. Things like this that he does are gambles. Now, when I say
he's got the economy to worry about,
when I say this is when
he's got the economy to worry about, gas prices have been dropping for 70 plus days. Hold on, gas prices. Hold on. Gas prices have been dropping for 70 straight days.
Oh wait, the president said he had nothing to do with those, right? Now is he saying that?
Yeah, no, hold on.
I got it.
We said no. You're not arguing fair right now, right? Because you said the economy, right? And so we're strictly talking about the economy, not talking about the president, just talking about does he need to worry about the economy? I'm saying gas prices have gone down for 70 plus straight days. Guess what else? The lowest unemployment rate in over 50 years, right? That shows you that the economy is doing really good.
The lowest unemployment rate, right? Well,
in almost 50 years.
Yeah, there was. Okay, I'm not even going to get into that.
Wages have been going up for like 2 quarters.
They haven't kept up with inflation. I mean, I get it. You can sit and champion what far left things say, but
that's not what far left. No, the economists.
Middle of the road Americans are hurting, and we will see how this plays out down the road.
Cameron, the Economist magazine is not a far left publication.
I think we need to wait and see what the midterms are, because this should be the Republicans dominating this year, and they're going to win the House. We all know that, and there's a good chance now they're going to even win the Senate. So
Republicans,
yes.
I mean, Sarah Palin just lost a special election in Alaska,
which
has been held by a Republican for 50 years.
We'll get to, but there's
this is the time to go. Let's
also
go.
Some other things. Well, we had a couple of other things though before we get to the Alaska special election. Trump. Did you want to talk about the documents real quick?
Yeah. So, I mean, it turns out now that they've released more information. Trump is his own worst nightmare in this thing, right? I mean, he came out and said that, those documents that were like the DOJ put out that picture, right, of all the top secret folders and all that stuff. And he came out and said that they're trying to portray him as messy because those documents were actually like in crates and organized when he had illegally had them. I mean, it has to go without being stated that he is literally being his worst enemy. I mean, he basically just told on himself. And the other thing is people get all caught up in the classification of these documents, all those other things. The problem is even if they were all unclassified, even if they were yellow sticky notes from his time in office, it's still against the law.
Oh, yeah. I'm not arguing.
I mean, that's all part of...
Talking about the documents, I saw George Conway the other night on a program, I don't remember which one, but he just said, hey, Donald Trump went and when he pled the fifth, 440 some times or whatever recently in that.
What did George Conway think about Biden's speech, by the way?
I didn't even look that up.
Okay.
I haven't. But I will say George Conway just said, hey, for a guy who pled the fifth 440 some times, he's like, he probably should do a little bit more keeping his mouth shut.
He should probably plead the fifth on True Social because he is definitely making it worse.
Which basically is what George Conway had said. Yeah, all kinds of things coming out with that.
Not to mention, but his lawyer, Christina Bobb, was on Fox News like 3 nights ago saying the same thing. Like, his lawyer is admitting to his guilt.
Right, that's
on Fox Television.
Which George Conway, who is a lawyer, is like, shut your mouths.
Yeah.
Like, just stop, right?
Now, I will say the most... Well, go ahead if you were going to...
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you basically hit the nail on the head, right? All kinds of classified documents and folders.
Yeah, the most disturbing part is they said there were 40-something folders.
40-ish folders marked as top secret, but there was nothing in them.
Yeah, so where this is getting scary, right? Because the The DOJ and the FBI already said they're doing a damage investigation, right, to figure out what has gone wrong. Where are those documents?
Yeah.
I mean, this could be some serious bad news.
Yeah,
right. This could eventually turn out to be that the former guy was one of the biggest traitors in American history.
I mean,
and that's not really an exaggeration.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, good luck proving that. I'm just gonna say, right. I'm not saying this isn't. I'm not trying to say this isn't bad. But
we don't have to. We don't have to prove that, right? And even if it is proven, we probably won't see the evidence because most people don't have the level of clearance or the need to know that would allow you to see that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's kind of said, "I'm guilty of the Espionage Act" on TV or on True Social.
Just what George Conway.
And then his lawyer got on to Fox News and said he's kind of guilty of the Espionage Act.
So let me ask you this: Does this latest news, does it cause Republicans to turn on him?
No.
Okay. None.
I mean, at this point, like, what else has to happen? Do we have to find out that he gave it to the Saudis in Bedminster?
So you don't think this moves the needle much with Republicans?
What?
No, I'm asking.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't know why, but at this point, nothing seems to move the needle with Republicans.
I think the moderates are. I mean, I think the moderate wing of the parties. It's probably.
Yeah, but I think a lot of those moderates were already voting for Biden in 2020.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and maybe voting for Cheney in 2024.
Exactly. I mean, this could be seriously damaging to our country and to the Republican Party.
Okay, well, you mentioned Alaska and Republicans stumbling a little bit ago, so why don't we look at that here? Take a moment and look at the special election results from Alaska, which the voting went on earlier in the month, but because of Alaska and how remote it is and such, they give it till the very end of the month to get all their ballots flown in from across the state. By the end of the month, I meant the end of August. And they now have them in, and it appears that the Republicans did lose yet another House seat, Phil.
Well, yes. Now, keep in mind, it's just a special election.
It is,
replace a Republican senator who had held that seat for representative who had held that seat for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. So that's a House seat that's been Republican for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
If not more, right? His predecessor could have been Republican too. I didn't go look it up, but
actually, the predecessor, I do believe, was a Democrat.
Okay. However, this is showing a swing now. In November, we're going to see this same election play out again.
Yep. Because they're going to. This was, like you said, the special to just cover the last little bit of Don Young's seat, and then November they will go for a full 2-year term.
Yeah, and let's not gloss over the fact that while this is a major shift in momentum, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that Republicans are going to win the House and could possibly win the Senate. This is kind of showing the opposite trend. I mean, this is showing a almost 50-year seat flipped, and not just flipped to Democrats, but flipped to Democrats against somebody who has the highest name recognition, especially in the state of Alaska. I mean, she was a former vice presidential candidate.
You're talking about Sarah Palin.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah Palin is a big deal.
So Mary Peltola did win it. She won that special election. She beat Nick Begich and Sarah Palin, as you just mentioned. She's gonna. I mean, she did win it, but this is the ranked choice voting in Alaska, which
means that the candidate with the highest popularity overall wins.
So Republicans actually earned 60% of the votes, right? Split between the other two candidates, but yes, at the end of the day, she did come out on top. So, and some of. I don't fully understand the rank, or haven't read enough on the ranked choice voting, but basically it's your vote and then you vote for your number 2 person, and if your number 3 guy or gal gets thrown out, then your number 3's, I think, number 2 votes go up.
Yeah, I don't know the details. You know what I did?
It is kind of confusing.
You know what I did read about ranked choice voting is the Republicans are the ones that pushed for the ranked choice voting in Alaska.
So, okay, well, I just read that both parties had said that they agreed to it. And you know what? It is interesting, though, ranked choice voting. Apparently other states are looking at it. I don't know which states they are. I've just heard other states have looked at it. But she did win. She's the first woman and the first Native Alaskan to hold the seat, or that's going to hold the seat. Does she win this again, though, in the November?
I think so. I think we are likely to see it play out just as this played out. The other thing I want to say is that she's also a big champion of Native Americans, and keep in mind that Alaska has the highest percentage of its population. Alaska has the highest percentage of Native American population of any state in the country.
Yeah, and she's, like I said, she's a Native Alaskan or a Native American herself.
Yep.
It'll be, Alaska, though, is a very red state, right? I mean, they've got a Republican governor. Their senators are both Republicans. Now, Murkowski is maybe a little more moderate.
Yeah, moderate, yeah.
But still, so it is a very red state. Again, Phil, you said it earlier. This Don Young held the darn seat for 50 years or close to it. So I think it's interesting that she did. I will say this, it is yet another GOP loss that we've seen in special elections lately, which, I mean, let's face it, Alaska, the Republicans should have won in Alaska. So is this an indicator that the Republicans are going to not take the House back? No, but I think there is some concern amongst Republicans that maybe the red wave that people thought isn't quite going to be the wave that, or doesn't turn out to be the wave that some thought it may be. I still think they take the House, but I will say this: Republicans have to look at a place like Alaska and say, "Man, we just lost in Alaska." I mean, it does have to be concerning, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they should be concerned. And the other thing too is you say it's a very red state, but I don't think we know. We would probably have to go back and research. Like, Alaska may have a lot of independents too.
It may.
That could be a factor in this kind of moving.
I guess when I say, though, that a red state, their governor, they tend to put, senators tend to be Republicans. So I guess that's where I'm going with that. I mean, you're right, though. They may have a lot of independents up there. I don't know. Yeah. That's actually something to look up. I'll actually look that one up.
Okay. Other races we want to talk about?
Yeah, Nevada Senate race. Phil, have you looked at that one much lately?
So I have a little bit. I mean, I think the latest poll still shows Catherine Cortez Masto leading by 4 points.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
And then
she's running against Adam Laxalt.
Yeah, who is a former attorney general. He also was on the Trump re-election committee.
He was
in 2020. So he is probably closer to MAGA, if not full MAGA Republican. How do you think this one turns out?
Boy, it's tight. I mean, I think you bring up a good point too, that it is tight with only a 4% difference. But I will say though, Cortez Masto, she's an incumbent, and you and I have both said on the show.
I was going to say.
It is hard to beat an incumbent.
Yeah, and so that's where I was going to go. I was going to go, while 4 points is pretty narrow, it's not as narrow when you consider she's an incumbent.
Their governor race seems to be split about the same margin too. Which
it's got a 3%.
Yeah. So, it's still within the almost the margin of error there. So yeah, I mean, it just seems though like the Senate and the governor race are split about the same. I think Cortez Masto wins it. I just do. I think she's the incumbent. I think Nevada's enough of a purple state, I guess, if you will. I mean, almost leans blue at times, really. But
yeah, and I think one of the big takeaways from this poll, like the most interesting thing about this was, it was 7%, I believe, said that they were going to vote for neither of the two, but they were going to vote for a third candidate.
That's interesting too.
And then there was a 9%. Undecided, yeah. So,
which could swing that either direction.
Yeah, which is also alarming because that's a pretty high number for this stage. I mean,
well, it is, and that's what yeah. Well, the other thing is, right? I mean, you brought it up a minute ago, right? Here's another election denier and all this other stuff, right? In a state that, I mean, it looks like Cortez Masto is vulnerable or could potentially be vulnerable. And, I mean, can you imagine if there was a more moderate, dare we say, more moderate candidate running? I mean, Phil, does that change the outcome of this? Or could it potentially? Obviously, there's not that.
I mean, I don't know what other candidate those 7% of these pollers took.
Yeah.
But that could be a moderate. That could be...
like an independent.
It could be an independent. It could be Bernie Sanders. We don't know. I mean, so we have... I don't have any other data to take away from that information other than what we just basically said.
Yeah.
So this is one we're going to have to wait and see, and it's going to get exciting on on November 8th.
Yeah, that'll be definitely one to watch. This has been, as I look at it now, we talk about these races and such. I'm looking here, we're about out of time, but it's been yet another great episode. Phil, do you want to plug our website here a bit?
Yeah, so go to pocketpolitics.co. That's our website. We've got links to the Facebook page. You can go there. You can see our latest episode from there, etc. You can listen to it there if you want, or get our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. We are available. And with that being said, what's your parting shot for this week, Cam?
Well, just before I go to the parting shot, I just want to say really quick, the Facebook page too, we're putting content on there. Get on there. Please comment on our Facebook stuff, like our posts, etc.
Absolutely. I think, later today I'm going to post this Wall Street Journal article that came out that said 35% of independents are leaning Democratic running into November. Interesting data. We'll put up there. That way you guys can go and read all about it.
Okay, so my parting shot. All right, well, this week for my parting shot, I want to go out to the state of Arizona, which is plenty going on politically in Arizona, and you've heard us talking all about it in a variety of episodes here, but I want to look at Mark Fincham, the guy who's running for Secretary of State out there.
Oh, the mustache.
Yeah.
This guy.
So
the former cop,
Michigan cop.
Yeah, former Michigan cop, election denier / lawsuit loser, Mark Fincham.
Who goes to Arizona, right? Former cop, Michigan, goes down to Arizona. I think he's selling real estate now down there, doing different things. But Mr. Fincham is running for Secretary of State out there, and he is throwing lawsuits out left and right. And it seems like, and judges are tossing him out almost as fast as he's filing them, I think.
Yeah, not only tossing him out, but he had to pay back all the lawyer fees, the legal fees to his opponents because it was such
$75,000 he had to pay back out. So yeah, Mr. Fincham, here you go. He's a member of the not alleged. He is a member of the Oath Keepers. Mm-hmm. He is there's some other far right Western group that he's. I forget what, Western Land Use Group. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was up standing off with the Bundys in the Malheur Wildlife Refuge up in Oregon a few years back.
Yeah, the guy's a nut.
Yeah, and so he's, anyway, so he's, I guess why I'm bringing him up, he's at it again with lawsuits. I think him and Carrie Lake coupled on a lawsuit that just got tossed out. He's been in the news, and you know what? He may very well take his big mustache right on into victory in November and be Arizona's next Secretary of State.
Well, only if he's better at winning elections than he is lawsuits.
True.
Because he's not doing too well in those.
Phil, though, I got to say, I like your nickname. I think that man on our show from here on out just needs to be called the Mustache. Yeah, would you agree?
Everybody will know who we're talking about. Yeah.
All right, well, Phil, what
I
you
just
got?
worry about,
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to offend the mustached, groups,
So
and mustached listeners that we have. So I don't necessarily want to, Okay.
All right.
So
what you got, Phil?
This week I wanted to just talk about the White House Twitter account. I mean, I'm not on Twitter, but I see it reposted all over other forms of social media. Wow, it has gotten spicy, Cameron. I mean, this is like next level trolling. I mean, it almost looks like they hired somebody from Fetterman's campaign to come in and run their Twitter because it has just gotten spicy over the last couple weeks, and it's kind of it ties back into the whole Dark Brandon memes and all these things. So I think that's out there. Look out for it. It's coming. I heard something about them hiring somebody who does this thing for a living to kind of run the Twitter account. But whoever's doing it, they're doing a fantastic job because regardless of whether you agree with it or don't agree with the White House's stance on things, it's just fun to watch.
Well, and in present day times, right? Social media is huge. And you've got to have some good, you need good social media behind it.
Yeah, and not only is it good, but it's so good, it's getting replicated so far beyond Twitter because I'm not on Twitter, you're not on Twitter, but we are seeing all this stuff on various other forms of social media. So keep your eyes out for that. That's all I really have for this week. Cameron, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
I think it's a great episode, and thank you so much to our listeners for listening, and of course, thank you for our listener who gave us the idea this week to run or to talk about possible 2024. I thought that was a fun thing to talk about. Didn't you, Phil?
Absolutely. But again, I thought it was a great topic. And again, thank you for all the engagement on social media, sending us the emails, putting ideas out there, and if you keep doing it in the future, we will talk about it.
As we did today.
Absolutely. And Cam, I'll see you next week.
All right, until next time.